How should an adult child honor their parents who think they are Christians while faithfully declaring the gospel to them and exposing their sin?
I would say that that's not the place to start. I think adult children should start in their relationship to their parents, laboring to expose their own sin. So my first duty toward my parents, who are non-Christians or who think they're Christians or who are genuinely Christians but they have issues, my first duty is to cover their sins in love. Love covers a multitude of sins. And when I cover their sins, what often happens is I'm exposing my own. Right? I realize how hard it is to cover and
Right.
how hard it is for me to do that and how hard it is for me to let go. So I would say the first duty in honoring your father and mother is to honor them. And then at some point, their behavior may be so egregious that you have to say or do something. And if it gets to the point where you have to say or do something, it's far better to have to say or do that after a long pattern has already been established of honoring and respecting them in every way you can think of. You've got cash in the bank before you have to write the big check.
Would you say that sometimes it's better for someone else to do it, such as a pastor or a friend, than for children to do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I believe sometimes it's necessary for children to do it, but I think that really ought to be the end of the line,
Okay.
where it's every other option has been exhausted, and it's an egregious thing that cannot be papered over. But if let's say you're very aware of the fact that you're bringing up your kids in the faith, and every time you go to visit the grandparents, they squabble between grandpa and grandma squabble and
Right.
fuss at each other. That's an occasion for teaching your children, preparing them before you go, and teaching them afterwards that that's not the way we want to live. But at the same time, we love grandpa and grandma, and we want
Right.
to honor them and respect them. That's all you do. You don't. And if you are diligently honoring them that way, I think that's going to expose sin in the right way.
Right. Almost by example.
By
as
example,
they watch
yes.
their lives.
By example and demeanor, right?
I would imagine a fairly common scenario of this would be when a child becomes a Christian as an adult, and then their parents are non-Christians and probably don't have many Christian friends. I guess there you'd really want to establish many years of just faithful living
Right.
first.
Yes, you really don't want to get converted and then go home to your parents with the unspoken message that you joined a cult.
Right.
Which is how it's going to come across, because it's what you want to have come across to them is, man, something wonderful happened to my kid.
Right.
That's what you want to communicate.
Right.
And if the first thing that comes from you to them is, censorious condemnations, that's not good.
Okay. And so in that situation, would it if you wanted to, if it was the kind of sin that you really felt the burden to, they needed to know it was sinful. Maybe it was maybe they think they're Christians, and for that example.
Well, let's take a stark example. Suppose you're going home for Thanksgiving, but Dad has moved out, has left Mom. Grandpa has left Grandma, and he's living with his girlfriend, across town, and he wants to come to Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
And you can't act to your kids as though this is okay.
Right.
And you can't act publicly in the family as though this is okay. There
Right.
are times when you have to draw a line, and that's what I assume is meant by this question of exposing their sin. But that's the level, the kind of sin that kids should expose by saying, I can't underwrite that. I can't
Right.
say that, act like that's okay. Should be 10 Commandments stuff.
Okay.
It should be, kids, it's not okay that your grandpa is a bank robber. It's not okay.
Right, yeah.
And that should be open. Sexual sins, unlawful divorces, homosexuality, things like that you have to draw a line. But you want to draw the line having been the sort of person who was honoring in lots of ways up to that point.
Okay. And if there's, let's say you did become a Christian, and 6 months later you've not had you live in a different town, and there is one of these 10 Commandment sins. It's
Right.
not one of these, they're living a hypocritical lifestyle while thinking they're Christians and going to church, but it's one of these 10 Commandment sins. Would you say they should draw the line themselves, or they should bring in help to do that?
I would say they should bring in help when help is available.
Okay.
Right. Basically, sometimes it's not, but if there's a possibility of a good cop bad cop arrangement, then the kids ought to be the good cop.
Okay. Okay.
Right, and the kids ought to agree with the bad cop. Let's say
Right.
a pastor or a family friend has said what needs to be said. The children can say, well, we do agree with that, we do stand with that, but we love you guys and we want to honor you in every way we can.
Right.
That's kind of
Right.
thing.
And so it seems like there are times when, if there is not a bad cop, if there's not someone to help,
Right.
and you do have to approach them because it is a 10 Commandment thing, is there any advice you'd have for if you're in that situation for broaching it? You're at their living room, mom, dad. Do you have any advice there?
Yeah, I'd say that oftentimes in situations like that, I've said before that it's time for the great 2-word prayer, which is Geronimo, Amen. You just say, man, this might be ugly. I might kick myself all the way home because I didn't say the right thing.
Right.
But sometimes sometimes ugly is faithful.
Okay.
That
Sometimes you just need to say
just
it.
have to. You just have to do it.
Trust God for the rest.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.